Everyone to this event today. This is and welcome you on behalf of the CSRC, the Center for the Study of Religion and Culture. Also on behalf of the Divinity School where I teach. My name is John McClure. For those of you who don't know me, I teach here. I actually teach homiletics and ta-da, that's me. Yes. Let's try that again. I also want to welcome you on behalf of the CSRC's Music, Religion in the South Study Group. This is one of the events for this group, which is called Music, Religion, and the South. This is our God in Music City project. Thanks also to Doug Knight. Doug, I thought I saw, yes, Doug's here, Volney Gay, who are directors for the center, for their ongoing support and their encouragement of this project. Just a word about the God in Music City project. This has been a semester-long public education course to some extent, which has included the creation of a 2-disc compilation CD entitled God in Music City. That's this, which are for sale, if any of you would like that. We've also had a series of events at night spots such as the Bluebird Cafe and the Basement, in multiple houses of worship, on a bus tour that Robin Jensen, one of our faculty here at the Div School, led for us, at Downtown Presbyterian Church, which hosted our Sacred Blues event, which Dave Perkins, I saw you, Dave, headed up for us. We had an event this last Sunday at the Vanderbilt's Blair School of Music, which Michael Rose put together for us. And now here at the Divinity School, Jimmy Bird, who's a member of our Music, Religion, and the South group, has kind of headed this up, and he and Jim Hudnut-Boimler, the dean here at the Div School, are going to be leading us. This is our next to the last event in this God in Music City series. Our final event will be April 17th, which is our capstone conference and concert. That will be held here at the Div School. For more information about that, if you're interested, you can go to our website, www.godinmusiccity.org, and there's more information about the Capstone Conference. There are also flyers out if you want to pick one up. This is about the conference and about the concert, which ends that conference, which will be held at Second Presbyterian Church on Belmont Boulevard. A wonderful evening of music entitled Music, Religion in the South, Where Do Songs Come From? Tom Kimmel and friends presenting. Any study of God in Music City would, of course, be remiss without some interaction with the country music industry here. And today, Jimmy Bird and Jim Hudnut-Boimler, two esteemed American religious historians, are with us. They will review the theological ideas afoot in some of the most popular country music videos today. These videos are strong communicators of religious ideas, and it's likely then that the help of these two scholars in locating and understanding these ideas will be fruitful to us all. So without further ado, I ask you to join me in welcoming Jim Hudnut-Boimler and Jimmy Bird and God in Country Music Videos.
Thank you, John, and thank you all for being here. I'll say a word as to format in just a minute or two, but for right now I want to make if you're here, you're probably interested at least a little in what we might find in terms of God and associated subjects in country music videos. But I want you to think about how ubiquitous these are in culture, and particularly in rural places in America and in places like Nashville that have a cultural twang to them, if you will. Country music is our probably most popular radio format. People listen to some of the songs, like we'll start out with Jesus Take the Wheel. When you shop in a Target, you're hearing this song. People may go and hear a sermon once a week by a graduate of the Vanderbilt Divinity School or some other seminary that's been carefully crafted and purged of all theological irregularities. Make that some. But anytime you're shopping at a Target or a Macy's or or driving along and playing with the radio, you may hear another kind of theology, country music, and all of our videos today are from country music, not from Christian contemporary music or from Christian music. We deliberately picked a kind of mainstream to show how ubiquitous this theology of the people is, and theology of artists working within the métier of theological ideas on the one hand and country music on the other in the mainstream are. So we will encounter, and you would encounter with some other songs, miracles, Jesus, sin, repentance, the theme of forgiveness, theme of unrequited love, a mother's love, a father's love, perseverance, heaven, the Bible as scripture and as magical talisman. All of these themes will be present this afternoon. What I find interesting about them, and will invite your reflection, is how they're used in non-customary ways. Artists, be it these classical artists or songwriters or songwriters plus videographers, have a certain amount of license that preachers don't have, to say things that are on the heart that may not be fully formed or defensible in propositional form or within received Christian theology, but nevertheless represent what people are thinking now and really thinking. These may, in fact, be revelations of how people actually think they're getting to heaven and what happens when we die and what really matters in a life well lived. So without further ado, we'll bring up Carrie Underwood singing "Jesus, Take the Wheel." Pay attention as we go into this about the different stories told in the song and the visuals, and then we'll invite your reflections on those. All right? Any and all of it.
Crucifix on her earring.
Okay.
She looks like a Barbie doll.
Yeah. Yeah, my wife said, "Where'd you get that skin?" Yeah.
I was intrigued by just the overlay of the different scenarios and what we were intended to understand about the meaning of the interrelationship between them. This young mother, the song's narrative is explicitly about this young mother.
Right.
There's no narrative in the
It's
song.
all her story on the way to Cincinnati and.
Right, and so the videography decisions to then incorporate this elderly couple and this fighting couple as a way to presumably extend that narrative. I'm kind of intrigued by those choices. Not quite sure what to make of them or how they got there, but I think that's what we're understood. What we're supposed to do is we're supposed to link them.
Right. And I began with this because this is an interesting case of videos began being, as the MTV genre sort of got going, they were very literal.
Right.
And what we see here is both being very literal and loading more meaning in. What do all those videos have? What do all the segments, if there's a narrative arc in each of those three segments, what is it?
Is it a life out of control or?
Life out of control and forgiveness.
Relinquishing the control.
And relinquish. So it reinforces Jesus take the wheel, but it's not just about a single mother on the way to Cincinnati and the sheet of, it takes it out of that story, and your story might be in there, right? A marital story, a motherhood story, parenthood story, old age, Alzheimer's. So everybody is invited in. One of the powerful things that happens when people are watching these on GAC in the kitchen, is that this is a kind of pretty heavy-duty set of narratives, all of which reinforce metanoia, repentance, turning around, conversion, and what happens in the resolution. Not in the song. Everybody's happy. So it really delivers an even bigger thing. In the song, she's just saying, I'm letting go, I'm sorry about the way I'm living, I'm going to be different. They're not only different, things are better. So we get to ratchet up this thing. And of course, this is a kind of Christian testimony that's sort of like an AA witness or a camp meeting witness or something where the thing is tied up in a bow. Let's go on to our next video, which is Brooks and Dunn Believe. Little side story here, the principal writer for this is actually married to one of our Vanderbilt graduates. And we'll say a little bit more about that in a minute. I began using this, which was I believe country music, not only song of the year, but later became video of the year, for a course on Jesus in modern America, and I was looking for artistic representation. I use that, and I always open up with the question, where is the Jesus in that video? The red letters. And, what does that mean?
Where's the Jesus from?
It's the words that are directly attributed to Jesus in the text. What does it mean? How does it function in the song?
It actually had almost 3 functions in the song. You got one function to where it tells you that Jesus tells you to love one another as I've loved you, which means no matter what color boundaries or what age, and you saw that between the young kid and the older man, as far as age-wise, and the African-American guy and the Caucasian guy as far as color.
Yeah.
And as far as the words itself, it kind of speaks on as we get older, we get wiser. So he was saying that when he was young and he read those red letters, it really didn't mean that much to him. But as he got older in life and thought about the things that the old man taught him, his words actually meant something totally different to him.
Yeah. Yeah, there is this transmission of faith story is one of the stories that's in here, and the red letters are the way we know that, and the red letters are Jesus's presence, that I invest myself in. It's also, of course, Jesus, the Greek text aren't in red. I mean, so that's an American innovation, but it's nevertheless a powerful one. Yeah.
There's also such a focus on the afterlife in the words written in red, and also in the video and the song, because it's the very first time the old man speaks to him about Jesus is about seeing his wife and his son in the future, and so and then the way the video seals that with the picture of his wife and his son. The old man has died, sort of emphasizing yes, he really did get to, there's more to it than a hearse, there's more to it than he really did get to be reunited with his.
Yeah, and if you see this like on a high resolution TV, it's on the words written in red, which serve as the promises of Jesus for an afterlife. So not that much may be in those words written in the red about the afterlife, but there's a way that this song is very much that. I also want to pick up the race theme because the song and the video play up the first point you made in subtle ways. There's nothing in the song that says that old black man. So he didn't have to be black, but there is already a suggestion of it in the musical form. And there are two suggestions, really. Choir and the organ, the Hammond C3 or B3 with the Leslie, played in the particular idiom of the black church. This is not, you know, so we have a mixture. We have two roots. So this is a gospel tune, written in the here and now, but is one of the oldest forms of this sort of Christian vernacular music for the South. What else did you see?
I'm really struck by how in both of the videos, and especially so in this, that there's this interplay back and forth between the performer and the narrative. And so with Carrie Underwood, it looked like at one of the points she was in the same space as the young mother, kind of, right? Not necessarily the other spaces, but here, at least I felt that I was supposed to see Kix Brooks, or whoever is doing the singing.
Ronnie Dunn.
Ronnie Dunn, okay.
Yeah, you got to feel sorry for Kix Brooks.
But
that's
it's just in the
whole
background.
thing.
Okay, so Ronnie Dunn, I felt that we were supposed to see, to not just see that as a story of a boy, but to see that in a sense as his story. That the young boy looked like him, the older, you know, the young man looked like him, and so I'm intrigued by the meaning of the performer as testifier, as narrator, and as character all at once.
Yeah. Now I happen to know that Craig wrote 99% of those words. Ronnie gets co-credit and did some things with the music that Craig never could have expected to do voice-wise with any performer. So they co-wrote. But he presents it as his testimony, and you're exactly right. It is, you know, by following the time thing it does is contemporary back then, so we see that.
color too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do you know if he intended in the writing, since you know the writer of that song, did he intend the racial message that was there about whatever he is, I mean, or was that artistically added to the video with the music backgrounds and the, I'm really
As I understand it, there actually is a real story about a neighbor from Craig's growing up time in Mississippi. I don't believe that there's an interracial dimension
because, yeah, and I asked that in part because
in that rural neighborhood.
when I look at that video, it feels like a romanticization of racial relationships rather than, I mean, it feels very romanticized in unrealistic ways and very white ways. And so I just wondered what the intention of the writing was and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's the intention of the writing, and then there's the thing as you find the canonical version as you finally have it. And with music videos, you have two versions. Back to a point Allison made, it's one of those, you got to sell the message, you got to sell the song, and you got to sell the performer. And so all of these things have this interplay because the very best, we'll get to one later that Jimmy's going to show that doesn't sell the performer all that well, but it sells a great message, and we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, one other comment. I just thought that Craig Wiseman, graduate of Vanderbilt Divinity School, a fairly liberal institution in some ways, theologically. But there's this great push for this desire for personal bodily eschatological, this eschatological vision of personal reunion with family at the end of the day. And all of which hinges on belief. I mean, there's this powerful sense of wanting to believe, or believing beyond one's disbelief, beyond one's rational abilities, as taking you the next step, which I think is shot through several country music.
Yeah. But note that this is semi-sophisticated in the sense that there is this uncertainty.
Right.
It's
right.
belief in the face of death that the testimony is correct, not that I really know that Jesus has taken the wheel and I had this miracle experience. It's all, you know, these are very different accounts.
I'm very troubled, I mean, in both of these, by what I don't think is a connection between and the character. I mean, I understand that's supposed to sort of happen in there, but I didn't believe that performer was the character. I mean, not for 1 minute did I think that Ronnie Dunn went to college and talked on the telephone to his mom. Not a guy that looks like that, you know. So, and same with Carrie Underwood. I mean, she's the Barbie doll and not the woman who's holding the crying baby.
Right.
So we have a distinction made between the pop star, you know, and the characters they're singing about. I thought there was a
Yeah, and that may be one of those distances that preserves the autonomy of the performer to sing you know, Carrie Underwood. Next song cycle was, you know, slashing all 4 tires, right? Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, having taught at the university where Ronnie Dunn went to school.
Oh. Can you talk on the phone?
Well, it was the early 70s, so it would have been. Yeah.
He wouldn't have grown up to look, I mean, that young man was going to grow up to be
It was a very, well, it was a very conservative university.
Oh.
So.
One of the things that really strikes me is that hearing that song, it doesn't seem like the relationship between the boy and the old man, you know, stays after he's a child. I mean, and in watching the video, he's got a picture of him on his wall in college, you know, and his mom's saying, "Oh, by the way," it's not as though. Yeah, exactly. It disconnects in a lot of ways. The relationship is much closer in the video than the narrative of the song implies, I think, or at least that's the impression I get.
Yeah. On the other hand, there's a verisimilitude in the. I talked to my mother, you know, back in Iowa, and she tells me about somebody who died. I haven't seen him for 20 years, but I do miss him. So there's.
Well, yeah, but do you have a picture of him on your wall along with a picture of you and your girlfriend? I mean, you know,
You go
in
home
college,
to
you
the
just,
funeral and
yeah, one of the pallbearers. I mean, it seems, I don't know, it just.
Yeah,
it
but
just
there are
struck me.
some folkways that tie you to the land, too, that are played up here. That you know, they could have struck up a friendship in a suburban space, but it wouldn't have sold the romanticism halfway through. Well, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Bird for the next 2.
Following on these, we go back in time a bit. This next video is from 1993, which in thinking of the time space that we're in, that's sort of a canonical time, ancient history, in music video. This next video is a video from Garth Brooks. When you're talking about popular influence of country music, Garth Brooks has to be part of that conversation. The last time I checked, Garth Brooks was the biggest selling solo artist in American history. I know it kind of, he and Elvis are in this kind of horse race for that title. Every time they re-release an Elvis box set or something, they go back and forth. But over 100 million CDs sold. And that's not just a country audience. That's a fairly broad audience musically. And there are many theories as to how Garth Brooks achieved this, since he never had, I don't think he's ever had, certainly not a significant hit on the pop charts. Most of his songs have only charted on the country charts, but his albums have debuted at the top of the overall charts and outsold everything. I don't think you can escape an explanation that centers on visuals. Garth Brooks was known for his concerts, his dramatic performances, his television specials that were very popular in the early 90s, and his videos. His early videos took country music video to a new level to a certain extent. They took country music video into sort of the MTV genre of video. He had one video that was banned called The Thunder Rolls. It was banned from a lot of country video channels because it was graphic in its display of domestic violence, which of course increased the popularity of the video everywhere else and sold a lot of albums. This video is from 1993. And it's a video called We Shall Be Free. It's a song that he wrote with Stephanie Davis after being in LA during the riots that broke out after the Rodney King verdict came down. So this is a unique country music video. It was very, very controversial in country circles, although I don't think it got banned. But give a look and think about religious themes, especially sort of non-institutional religious themes that you see here. Okay, what did you see? What did you hear? And what's the relationship between?
I don't want to talk more than my share, but we didn't see him singing.
Right.
We saw him join a multitude of celebrities with voiceovers, or not voiceovers, actual kind of cameo shots, saying different messages.
Yes, this is an interesting case in which an artist actually adapted, in this case his art form, for video. I mean, this is very different. On the radio, you just heard the song. On the CD, you just heard the song. The video was a very different project.
So no, we didn't hear the celebrity voices on the
No,
song
not at all. Not at all.
And intentionally so. I mean, Garth was always about offering something additional and different in the video than what is reflected in the song. Thunder Rolls video was the same thing because it portrayed things that weren't in the recorded version of the song.
What about God? Where do we see God in this? Where do we see? How do we see religion portrayed here?
It's such a barrage of images. It was hard for me to even keep up with them. Like, I couldn't even catalog them, and they were so jarringly different from, you know, the war images and the patriotic. There was so much civil religion, I felt like, interwoven with all kinds of other freedom movements around the world and starving, hungry people in all kinds of cultures. I mean, I was just overwhelmed at the it was a picture of the all that's mostly bad and good with the world. He just tried to capture it all with the images.
It's very overwhelming, intentionally so.
Yeah.
What ties it together, if anything? What ties everything together?
Well, there was only the text, the biblical text, you know, faith, hope, love, grace to thesis, love, or, but it was really a collage, so you had a sense that there was nothing that, it was there was no center, it was just a collage of images, and I found it, I found it annoying because it tried to make everything look better.
Right.
And so you have this, everything's getting better message, but at the same time you're thinking, how does that doesn't connect with what I'm seeing on screen.
Right, it's like apocalyptic, but apocalyptic with a really bright side. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
there's this great apocalyptic struggle going on. It's in all these different fronts. Look at all these problems, and yet everything's getting better. Everything's going better. But you don't see in the images
Any proof of
that it's getting better.
No.
Right.
And education is presented as the key, and ignorance as the root of all that is bad.
And that's certainly in contrast with the previous two videos. They all begin with a conflict, and they all project a sort of hopeful trajectory. But in this case, it's education and the unbreakable human spirit that is the source of resolution. It's this worldly, like the first video we looked at, but not a Jesus take the wheel this worldly.
Right.
It's the human race maintains hold on the wheel.
Who's preaching here? I mean, this is kind of a sermon kind of genre here for video. I think it's very preachy in a sense. Who's doing the preaching?
Celebrities.
Celebrities, right. I mean, we have Mother Teresa, and we have Martin Luther King Jr., but then we have Jay Leno and
Martina
Navratilova,
Liz Taylor.
and Liz Taylor,
Gosh, that's Paula
and Paula Abdul,
And actually,
and Eddie Murphy.
And Michael W. Smith was the only Christian sort of artist.
Amy Grant.
And Amy Grant,
Well,
who was
you know,
already
depending on who.
crossing over at that point in the way of thinking
Right.
and
We've
from
been
the
trying to
Christian
get
side.
these people into homiletics classes for years.
Yeah, that's right. But you know, interestingly enough, country music has a long tradition of being very self-referential. You know, country music artists like to sing songs about Hank or Straight. And here, I only counted one country music artist, and that was Reba McEntire. You know, so it seems to want to cut across that identity, and the music itself. I mean, where's the music coming from? Is that it's not traditionally country either.
Pop.
Pop,
Gospel.
right? Kind of a what's that? You know, like a pop song. There's a choral influence. You get the sense of an African American spiritual
The choir
here,
has that, gospel feel to
which
it.
brings that prophetic, an attempt to bring that prophetic message. I mean, you know, he starts out saying, "This is not coming. Well, this ain't coming from no prophet or something," and then you know immediately that he's trying to say something prophetic. You know, so that's part of it, I think.
Is this sort of based on some of the big, you know, movements of pop artists to do fundraising, you know?
We Are the World.
There's a We Are the World,
Yeah,
a We Are the World feel to it, and what was the one before that? The Let Them Know It's Christmas Time.
yeah.
Yeah.
The 1993, I was
Band-Aid.
thinking back to Band-Aid.
Right, the celebrities can save.
Those were late 80s.
And it ties into that kind of celebrity worship. The authorities in our society are the celebrities, and the celebrities are the people that will listen to us. And if you need a message out, the celebrities and people get the message out.
I think it also refers in some ways musically and in visuals to the 60s as a freedom movement sort of thing. So it's like Curtis Mayfield, people get ready, there's a train a-coming.
Right.
In terms of a realized kingdom of God on earth that's coming, and we'll know it's arrived when this good stuff.
Right.
That's right after the wall came down too, and several communist revolutions, so I think it was kind of a hill with us.
Well, from a global perspective, this video came out right when I was still living and teaching in Africa when this came out. And I remember the way it was received in Africa has everything to do with hope and freedom, because this was at the time where the first elections were coming up in South Africa. People were playing this all the time.
Really? This video?
In South
Really?
Africa as a
Amazing.
video. Yeah. Not in East Africa where I was living, but friends in South Africa were
The
getting
video,
this.
Greg? Or
The video. So this was clearly still underground. This was seen as resistance. You know,
It was-
the message.
It was premiered at the Super Bowl in 1993.
That's right. I remember that.
So when you talk about the audience.
Right. And it was not a country music smash by any stretch. It was sort of ignored and wasn't played.
Jimmy, it strikes me again, it's very individualistic. There's not any sort of structural view of sin or evil. I mean, it's a far cry from a liberationist kind of theology. This is very much, if we take it onto ourselves, get educated, pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, grab hold of faith, love, and hope, and so on. And then the issues that are upon us are a matter of ignorance and prejudice, but we're really sticking more with a kind of individual frame rather than the sense that there are structural principalities and powers or structural forces, systemic forces that actually are evil, which is not to indict it, but I'm just saying it's a long ways from that way of thinking.
Right.
And I think what also strikes me as fairly typical in a great many of the sort of highly individualistic vision of both our problems and how we get out of them.
Right. In that sense, it draws on a long American tradition.
Yeah, it draws upon.
We can do this.
Right. We
Yes,
can do
we
it.
can do this. Right. The next video, I think we fast forward about 10 years. This is Johnny Cash, and this video, I think, I think any conversation about Johnny Cash, if it goes long enough, it becomes a religious conversation in one way. In country music culture. I mean, Johnny Cash, not only is he's this iconic figure, a great artist with much influence, but Johnny Cash also was a very conflicted religious person. WJK just published a book, I think, Johnny Cash and the Great American Contradiction. And there have been several books published on Johnny Cash's spiritual pilgrimage and spiritual life. And he talked a lot and wrote a lot about theology. But this video brings a lot of that out. So look for how religion functions here and how he presents it. And this is from his, it's a cover of 9 Inch Nails from his one of his American albums in 2003 it came out. Okay. Any religion?
Just a couple of things. You saw some scenes that was kind of reminiscent of the Last Supper, with him sitting at the table with the wine and everything. And kind of like the main theme he was trying to get across was, in a sense, don't put your faith or your belief in man, because man will eventually fail you somehow. So he was saying, in a sense, put your faith in God.
Yeah. He's certainly saying that this man will fail you somehow. Yeah, in many ways it is sort of Johnny Cash's Last Supper. He died shortly after this. How does that translate from the song to the video? I mean, what do you get with this video? I mean, if you've seen the 9 Inch Nails or the 9 Inch Nails version, you get a very different sense. Very much a younger artist, and Trent Reznor, born your I was, so I'll say younger. So what do you think? How does it translate? How does the religion function here work? The images.
Well, it seems like we are supposed to align him in some ways with Jesus, right? The Last Supper and everything. But I think what I hear you saying, sir, is that we're supposed to differentiate between Johnny Cash and Jesus Christ, and in sort of not putting faith in Johnny Cash, but instead putting faith in Jesus. Right. But it also, at the same time, seems to be aligning them in the sense of, you know, he hurt himself, that the interfusion of the images of the nails in the hands, and so it's just puzzling to me about. It could either be an enormous step of hubris, like what, you're comparing yourself to Jesus, you're putting yourself, or is he trying to, in stark contrast to Jesus, make the point about his own fallibility, and that Jesus is the only person who could save him from himself, kind of thing. I'm not sure what the message was about that.
Right. It could be one or the other, really. It could. Anyone else have an idea?
I think that when he's aligning himself to Jesus, though, it's very much in the suffering aspects. It's not, oh, I'm aligning myself with Jesus in the, oh, I'm so great, but in the, you know, carrying the cross, having the nails in the hands, the Last Supper, the betrayal. I mean, it's all very much a connection with that. Now, he could also be aligning himself with Jesus in that my suffering has some sort of greater value or some sort of deliverance option for other people. But I do think that that the connection he's making with Jesus in the song is through the suffering, and that the whole end of the song would be, well, if I could do it all again, I could find some way to heal. I think he's, in some ways, looking to Jesus as, okay, Jesus is a way to heal, but he can't quite get there himself, I think, because when you're talking about the contradiction, I mean, he wants to believe that, but you don't get the impression, because there is no, at the end, there's not a, oh, it's resurrected, you know, it's, yeah, there's just the, there's just the hands on the piano, that there's still the sense of, you know, just absolute isolation and loneliness, I think.
I think he's partaking of the sacrament, maybe.
Maybe.
Feeling the need for it.
But the part of it that still remains very American is I would find a way. I mean, this is first 2 stages Augustine, but not the. I mean, it never turns and says I would never find the way. And in that sense, it remains profoundly ambiguous as a Christian statement.
Very. And that's Johnny Cash.
Yeah.
Ambiguous as a Christian statement. Stanley Fish, literary critic, says about country music. He says country music is like contemporary Christian music, but with the sin left in. And, with Johnny Cash, you know, you get that, and not only from the movie about his life, Walk the Line, but you get that in all of his writings. He actually wrote a novel about the Apostle Paul called Man in White. You know, you get Man in White. And he, I think the crucifixion scenes are from a movie that he actually helped to write and produce about the death of Christ, the life and death of Christ, the resurrection of Christ. We don't get to the resurrection here so much. I mean, this is very much the suffering, which is, I think, where we see the trailer. But
what do you make of the use of the still life and the kind of Bacchus? It's very Baroque. It's with the fruit and the food. I was not sure what to do with that.
I'm glad you said that. I was hoping you might know.
Well, because our colleague Michael Rose isn't here today. You know, we just came out of a 23rd Psalm marathon, and it's kind of hard not to read the table being laid in the shadow of Johnny Cash's death, and him seeing images of himself as the ghosts of his evil past. You know, it's hard not to think of that as the 23rd Psalm rather than the Last Supper.
You know, I see something incredibly debauched there. So it's like the Caravaggio painting of the kind of hermaphrodite Bacchus laid out with all this. I mean, it's like he's copied that particular painting. Is it in the wall here anyway?
Yeah, I was looking around and I couldn't find it.
That's what I thought too. It really is. I really, well, you know, I think this is a kind of, well, it has some kind of almost existential. This is a very existentialist video for me. This is somebody whose worldview is, and in that sense, I mean, I was thinking about it in terms of maybe Tillich's theology, but you've got, you know, the human condition is suffering, finitude, isolation, loneliness, pain, betrayal.
His empire of dirt.
Right. You know, sin is idolatry, is putting your faith in the man, whatever that might be. You know, God is the power of being, of life, of being itself, against non-being, against nothingness. And then the Last Supper. That was a fact. You know, the only help that I've got in this world is the only redemptive power I've got winds up being poured out into nothingness, not into the community, into the nihil. And so you've got the courage to be in a very strident form. At the end of the day, what you're left with is just sheer courage at your own table.
Yeah, very existential, very Tillichian in that sense. I'm reminded, you know, that line, courage to be, the courage to be is rooted in the God who appears when God has disappeared, and the anxiety of doubt.
Right. Yeah, I think that.
Or other anxiety.
This really reads out in that
that
frame for me. I mean, if I were going to use it in theology class, with some things missing.
Daryl.
But going back to what you said before the video about how any conversation about Johnny Cash becomes religious, I can't help thinking that this video is maybe not so much about Christ or Christianity or about redemption, but going back to Bacchus and it being Johnny Cash's walk through the shadow of the valley of death, that it is about the mythology of who Johnny Cash is. And I mean, the producer of this album was Rick Rubin, who redefined popular music genre by introducing rap music and making that mainstream in the 80s. This is kind of the last hurrah to catapult Cash into the canon of popular music, not just country music.
Sure.
Right? And as negative as all these images are, or as harrowing as that song is because it comes from 9 Inch Nails, it sells. I think young people just latch on to that despair. They think, wow, this is really cool.
Good tie-in with the Tillichian comment. Yeah, I think you're right, and you get that especially with, you know, the decaying museum. He's ridiculing, in a sense, his own mythology, his own careers, his own regrets come to the forefront here. This is sort of Frank Sinatra's I did it my way without the I'd still do it my way. I did it my way and I had problems. So.
Oh, I was just wondering, does anybody know who directed it? Because I remember.
Yes, I do.
There was a story about that.
Mark Romanek.
Maybe that's. I don't remember that name, but I thought there was.
He shot it in. I think he directed Office Space or 1 Hour Photo. Oh,
yeah,
Halloween.
okay. That kind of reminded me of, I remember hearing a story about that, there's, that story is also very contemplative.
But it does combine, you know, a lot of footage. I mean, those were footage and those were career highlights and things that he did, going into Folsom, riding the trains, him with his son, him walking back to the house that he grew up in, and reliving those painful memories, you know, losing his brother and all that, and the flood is called.
The question is, how much intention is there, though? Is that autobiography or biography? Because it's pretty advanced Parkinson's that he's got at this point. You can tell.
And diabetes. Right.
Oh, well, diabetes.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, but it takes a pretty special artist to take over somebody else's song and suck all the meaning out of it to be about you. So I agree. Is it you know, is it a tragic confession, or is it almost you know, mockery for the last buck to get you into the, you know, back into the Hall of Fame? One more time. What we're going to see next is Jimmy Wayne's "I Love You This Much," and it's got a surprise at the end for some of you in this room, and we'll see what that is. We ready to go? This is without charting as some kind of mega hit on radio. This went for like 6 months as one of the most requested videos on television channels that played requests. What's the appeal? Why do you suppose people would have requested this?
Well, first, a lot of people have broken relationships with their parents, so I'm sure there's something universal about that. But it I've heard that it's almost like that poem Footprints. It's in like many grandmothers' bathrooms. And,
Yeah.
you know, stuff like that. Not my grandmother, but
Why were there only one set of footprints? I was
Right,
so
right.
lonely then. That's when I carried you.
Yeah, and it's the
so-
same as I asked God how much He loved me, and He said, "I love you this much," and stretched out His arms. And I mean, I've seen that almost as many times. So, and it's like, or an there's a lot of internet. You know how you get those things, those little long stories, and then that's the payoff at the end. I've heard that several times.
Yeah.
We're just astonished that we recognize the church immediately. And it's our Catholic church, you know, so it's
Not your Catholic service by...
Right, and that was the astonishing part. This is a very Catholic crucifix with a large crown over it. So how does that work in terms of this mix of this, Jimmy's laughing over here, this Protestant choir and this very kind of...
Oh, but you absolutely need a crucifix, a cross would do it.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, the guy, yeah.
You have to.
That's a great crucifix, I mean.
And there's an eclecticism. I mean, this reflects the experience of not only the person who's writing it, but a lot of other people, that we borrow each other's symbols to get the meaning that we get. What? Anything else?
I want to start by this thing that happens. It happened in the Brooks and Dunn video too, and it's I'm trying to say the form of the song where you put the same words in one person's mouth and another person's mouth and another person's mouth. I mean, I recognize that's a very common form of country music at this point in time. I don't listen to it a lot, but I recognize that when I hear it very readily. But how that technique or whatever is so powerful and they do it visually even more powerfully. You know, those words were this little boy, and then they were the grown-up boy, and then they were Jesus. You know, and so that technique it's almost like an effort to say something about the timelessness of certain truths, and that how they interweave in our lives. And there's something very that draws you into that, whether you agree with the particular theology or not. There's something about that that's very, I don't know, it just sucks you into the story.
Well, there's a ventriloquism, and it turns out to be not just the little boy that has never gone away, that is still present in the man, but it is then turned into words of God the Father, right? Now I want to call attention to that God the Father. Anybody see some theological confusion here?
Well, I mean, the question was, I mean, when I first saw it, I think, well, okay, Christ is addressing this to the world. But on reflection, he's doing, the Father is the one who's not paying any attention.
Yeah. Well, okay. How many fathers do we have in the room, as it were, of this video? We have his earthly father, and we have God the Father, who loves you this much, I guess, in the form of Christ.
Yeah.
I realize I haven't been loved all this. I had a father, and that father is?
It's a modal father and
yes.
son. It's a bad, well, not bad, but just not Trinitarian.
That's right. And this is one of those places where the artist has stretched conventional theology. Is it bad theology? I mean, this is one of those.
But the question is he identifying Christ with the Father, or is he identifying with Christ dealing with his Father, who won't pay attention? I mean, that's where I found the real skirting on.
I looked up and I realized I hadn't been without a father, or
I hadn't been unloved.
I hadn't been unloved.
I didn't hear him say that the Father was the one doing the loving. It looks like you have Jesus standing between a destructive father and
except that the beginning, the beginning of the statement is, "Forgive me, Father."
Yeah.
Who's he addressing? His own father or God?
I think he's addressing both. And I think with this artistic concept here, he achieved what he wanted to achieve was at that point to where he transitioned to saying that even though his father didn't love him, that there was someone that did love him. He did what he wanted us to do. He wanted us to think of all these different things. Okay, what was he really achieving there? And it makes a link back to the Bible to where you and everybody that reads it interprets it differently. So each one of us in here looking at that video interpreted it different. Because to me, it was kind of unique. Okay, when he transitioned, okay, he's saying my daddy didn't love me, but although through all my struggles, Jesus loved me and he helped me make it through everything. So.
The best art needs interpretation, and there is a way in which this has introduced enough ambiguity to introduce, is this Joanna and I and the Father are one, so it doesn't really matter, or is it something else? Leah?
I'm not comfortable saying it's whether or not it's bad theology. It's not orthodox, but I think it's sloppy songwriting because there's a better version of this song. I think it's a Randy Trow song. Or a George
secret
about a father's love. Yeah,
right.
A secret that my daddy says is just between us. Anyway, and it goes from little boy to adult man to dead or resurrect or person in the afterlife.
You're getting to the gates.
Yeah, and then it has the orthodox relationship between Jesus and the Father. But anyway, so it just seems like they kind of were sloppy with this song, and got a big hit. But
or it says something heterodox, very much on purpose. Right.
Maybe.
Which I think is what artists do back to us sometimes. They refuse to color inside the lines, and sometimes they do it ignorantly, and sometimes they do it brilliantly, and you sort of have to.
And it resonates with people, which is kind of where we all started with this conversation, right? That sometimes what we see in the theology of these videos is what resonates with the populace. I mean, the populace, like there's something else, but obviously people are calling and requesting this video.
Yeah, well, it's back to broken relationships, and this is where we're carried, and maybe it's You know, there's a lot of grief out there for, and particularly somebody who's gone who you haven't reconciled with. So there's a pastoral function even in video music. The last one I'm going to show and then turn it back over is another father song. And it's by Trent Tomlinson, One Wing in the Fire. It's from last year. Okay, what did we just sing?
Wow, that was a big surprise, actually.
What, the baptism at the end?
Yeah, I thought everybody was going to a funeral.
We may have or maybe not. It's clearly something of an add-on in the video version. It's not sort of in the text. It's like one of those novels that you really like that Hollywood just said, no, the audience won't buy this.
Yeah.
So they, whatever. There's a religious form that this actually was, a fairly traditional religious form. Anybody want to specify? It's a prayer of intercession. The whole thing is a prayer of intercession. Who's it addressed to? To God. What are the but what's the argument here?
Your daddy tries, even though he's not always doing right, at least he's trying.
Yeah.
Please love him as much as I do.
And heaven wouldn't be the same without daddy.
Yeah.
And I've got enough faith, and Mom has enough faith.
And he does
To
too.
bring him over the edge.
She keeps saying his faith.
The daddy's faith.
Faith won't faith.
Yeah. And so it's addressed to God with who in the purview? Prayers are said not only one-on-one, but in a context. What's the context of making this kind of intercessory prayer?
It seems like in part it's to the potentially judging society that lives all around them. That guy standing at the church door with the Bible waiting. It seems like part of it is a plea that everyone recognize the goodness of his Father, not just that God recognize the goodness of his Father.
Yeah, I think it's about the moralism of the community. He doesn't look like much of a good Baptist, but please take him in, God, and please you folks over here recognize that he fixed my broken car and my broken heart, and there's some merit in that.
He's not either, and he's on the big Harley. He's he's got
the son.
Yeah. No, I mean he doesn't look like the other people in the scene either. The cute freckle-faced children with the So
right. He doesn't have that.
Headscarf thing on.
So is it an intercession for himself?
And that's where the ambiguity comes in the last scene, because one way to start reading the last scene is as a resurrection.
Right.
Yeah.
And it takes a while to realize that it's a baptism, but even as a baptism, it's his decision to go the same way.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also a resurrection, and it may be that the point is that his father's dead, but the baptism. I mean,
but he's now going his Father's way.
But this is a trope used all the time in terms of baptism is a resurrection.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But I thought the same thing about...
Daddy gets it one way or another, at least.
I thought the same thing about the intercession for himself, because I thought originally when we were seeing the images of a guy on the motorcycle, that it's the Hell's Angel who was his father.
Yeah.
But then lo and behold, in fact, it's him.
Yeah. It's sort of a cultivating a tough boy image, and once again, we have to preserve the image in the video, but it makes it all the more interesting to go to this sort of primitive Baptist church on the Harley and play that out. Theologically, there's one very un-Protestant thing happening here.
Was someone interceding for someone else rather than by his own words?
Well, no, we'll intercede for one another. I think the un-Protestant thing here is that we're talking merit. We're talking Daddy's merit, not you know, unearned grace and I want to throw daddy on it. But here's this fascinating thing. We all do that. And again, it's one of those things that you wouldn't get from your preacher, but you just got from the country song that you recognize if you've ever had a prayer life. You know, it's kind of like a bargaining with God thing that's just
believe
part
in
of
him,
the
I
whole.
believe in you. That's me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I agree to believe in you, will you please believe in him?
Yeah. And more. Well, that's my last one. We'll have.
Like Dean Hudnut Boiler's last video, these next two videos, the final two videos, are both baptism type videos, and they include baptism scenes in them. This first video is based on a song that fits the typical country music narrative type. Several writers on country music history have said that country music is the most narrative-based musical genre. I mean, the lyrics come to the forefront. There's a real emphasis on being able to understand lyrics, which is not always so important in some genres. So it's really critical. And this one is a 3-act drama that involves baptism, and it's a particularly good, I think, example of a type, and we'll see if it's a good example of a religiously themed video. Sawyer Brown, by the way, they don't understand. I think it was the songwriter Harlan Howard who said that country music consists of 3 chords and the truth. In the typical pattern here of a country music song, 3 scenes and the truth, and each one unfolds a little bit more of a revelation until you finally have the final scene which kind of wraps it up. What did you see here in that regard in these scenes? What ties them together and what themes come out to you?
There's one theme, is forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
It's the entire theme is forgiveness. You don't know what the other person, you don't know what the people next to you are going through, so don't criticize them. And if they raised Jesus on the cross, said forgive them, they know not what they do, or something to that effect.
Right, in the end, this is the country music version of some of the last words of the cross, on the cross, right? Forgive them, they know not what they do. And forgiveness is particularly tied to knowledge. If you just knew what the other person was going through, then you'd be more forgiving.
Right.
You just don't have the information, you don't have the sympathetic ear, and you don't have the patience, or you don't have the time to listen. So it's a matter of listening, seeing the other point of view. The first scene, it seems to me that it's a boundary kind of scene. And you see the way the video uses color. Some people are in color, some people in black and white. The people who seem to know are in color. The people who seem to be in sort of the ambiguous side are in black and white. In the first scene, it's the one whose kids are acting up, and the guy says, typical parent can't control their kids. A judgmental kind of front. It's us versus them. I would control my kids better if I had kids. In many cases, those people don't always. But then the second scene, but it does find out that children, their father died. The second scene is the other end of the lifespan spectrum. It's the elderly. And here, the video is very different from the song. In a sense, the song talks about an old man driving down the interstate. The video is he's in the junkyard and he's driving the old car that he used to have. And he envisions his wife still being there, and she's dead. But again, it's a lack of understanding. And then finally, it's the words on the cross: "Forgive them; they know not what they do." So, how does this work theologically? Does the video help to make that point? How do you see it?
I kind of figure out that it's a metanoia moment, though, because it's the baptism. It ends with this baptism, so it's a kind of, and the striking image that caught me is these are all people rushing through their life, trying to get ahead, trying to get all the prizes, and then he throws away the briefcase. So this is the old person, new person scenario too, right?
Right, the new birth, and it's also that classic country music theme of nostalgia. It's even though we're in these modern lives with a fast-paced society, and we're part of that, we're looking back to the old days when people actually took the time to understand each other. So that's a classic sort of country music thing there, and it's a conversion to recognizing that that kind of understanding is necessary for forgiveness, it seems. What else do you see there?
Jesus, even in his death in the video and in the lyrics, functions as moral exemplar, as a sort of reinforcing example of what good living looks like through empathy. And it's interesting that it was that, I guess because that scene at the cross, the words of the cross, doesn't make a lot of sense in this song. But it's interesting that they still chose the death to make the example point as opposed to teaching how to live right, Sermon on the Mount kind of material. There's no salvific quality in this sense. There's no substitutionary atonement or anything in this death. This is very much moral example, which goes back to the common thing we've seen in all videos of living rightly in merit as a key source for pleasing God, maybe, or for getting along with each other.
Right. And we don't see Jesus here, as in some of the other videos.
Yeah.
It's just Jesus is talking about. In the last video, I mean, now for something completely different. This is not a video at all, but it's probably the most influential video representation of country music in the past 10 years. It's a scene from the Odyssey of country music, Old Brother, Where Art Thou?, which was so influential, topped the pop charts and the country charts as a soundtrack album, propelled the bluegrass resurgence, and itself was in many ways carried forward through the music and through religion. And this is a baptism scene from that. Many clips from this and other parts of the movie were taken and made into music videos, actually, so they could be played on MTV. So this is from the Coen Brothers, Old Brother, Where Art Thou? So what did you see, and what do you think about the way it presents theological statements about baptism?
I think you as a Baptist should probably talk to us about
Well, that's why I chose
I don't want to wade into these waters.
Yeah, so to speak. The entire, I think, the religious themes here, I mean, specifically Christian themes in this movie, carry the narrative forward like the music does. In that sense, the southernness is brought out. Religion's used to bring the southernness out to depict the Depression era Mississippi. Religion is part of the comedy. Baptism here is in a sense ridiculed from one side as a way to escape from all kinds of transgression. You know, baptism is seen as part of the escape. There's a sense in which there's an idea that religious sin and civil crime are equated, and you see that with the image of the marshal, who's kind of the Satan figure, which comes out a little bit later. How else do you see, if you've seen the movie, how else do you see this being part of it and how it carries forward the theme? Anybody remember the last scene?
Isn't there a big flood, a dam breaks,
Right.
right?
Right.
Yeah, and he's looking for his crazy wife's wedding ring. I don't remember what happens after that.
Right.
This is one of two. Being hanged.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That keeps him from being hanged.
This is one of two baptism scenes.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. And the other baptism scene is, Ulysses Everett McGill here, who is the agnostic representing the new modern age that's coming. We're going to get rid of these superstitions. They're not going to be part of our worldview anymore. Baptism's part of that. Mysticism is part of that. Any kind of supernaturalism is part of that. And then you get to the end, and he's the one on his knees praying for deliverance. And once he confesses and repents, he's baptized in the flood that saves them. you know, it rescues them from their.
Everett plays out the kind of foolishness of Christ is, you know, trumps the folly of the world again and again in this movie, such that he is obviously an idiot, but he's a moral idiot.
Yeah. And that line, it's a fool that looks for logic in the chambers of the human heart. The whole gopher scene was about that line.
Well, there's that sense of, you know, of just, you know, guilt and, you know, it's just the angel with the wing dipped in the fire again, you know, who's just having trouble in this life. We hope that they're going to get it, but just need to kind of deal with it on a regular basis, try to figure a way to kind of help with the sin, you know, and going to church or going to be baptized or whatever, and a way to kind of assuage in some way this deep sense of guilt, or even a shallow sense of guilt in some ways. It'll help me get through another day.
It would probably help me some to understand, which everybody else here may know, is the layers, starting off from the songwriter, who turns over the song to a marketing operation, which includes an artist who's basically a marketer. And so it's marketed at the, it gets reinterpreted at the audio productions. And the songwriter's kind of out of the loop at that, right? Okay, now when we go to the video, are the audio marketers out of the loop the way in which the songwriter was out of the loop on the audio?
No.
No.
They're very much involved.
They're very much involved.
They have to be, right?
A video is a marketing tool.
Yeah.
I mean, we're
Yeah.
looking at it today,
Yeah.
obviously in different contexts, but very much a marketing tool, which goes back to why sometimes the artist, it determines the artist's role in the video, how much they're seen, what role they fill, if they're appearing as themselves, if they're in costume, how much they're in it, and whether you're doing a themed video, a narrative type video, or if you're just gonna shoot them performing on stage, because that's what they're known for.
Yeah.
So it's all imaging and marketing. And Trent Tomlinson, for example, I mean, he wears that bandana and the earrings and the jackets. That
In real life, those.
that's
not
his.
a costume.
That's him.
Yeah, that's his deal.
Are you in that industry?
Oh, yeah. That's why I asked the question, because Karen was here. Yeah.
I think also it's interesting to point out this movie, Old Brother Where Art Thou, played very well, we'll say, in country markets. And that's not necessarily transparent. It's that it would, it seems to me, because in a certain sense it's ridiculing this. And except for the end, when even, you know, you might say the low church Protestant worldview gains its comeuppance, literally. I think overall you get the commodification of religion. There's a Bible salesman who's the Cyclops.
Yeah.
There is that sense that religion's turned to for not so honest and redemptive purposes and soul.
These are nice Jewish boys from Minneapolis making this movie.
Yeah, yeah, right. Very, so, you know, this played much better, well, in a much different era. Elmer Gantry, of course, didn't. So. Anything else to close? Any closing comments?
Vivian, special thank you to Nicholas Head for making this video stuff all work, and to Karen Bird for getting us good copies of the video in the first place, so you didn't have to watch a YouTube version. Thank you very much, and thank you for being here. John, do we have a reception?
Yeah, we do. Let's say a word. Let's say thanks to these folks.